Environment Regeneration Committee. This meeting has been held remotely and also in person and will be filmed and recorded for live and subsequent broadcast available through the Council's website. The Council is a data controller under the General Data Protection Regulations and Data Protection Act of 2018. We broadcast and record council meetings to fulfil our public task obligation to enable members of the public to observe the democratic process. Data collected during the process will be retained in accordance with county published policies available through the Council's website. Members of the Council are reminded that they should follow the Council's established meetings protocols, including allowing the use of the chat facility, and that comments made in the chat facility are visible to all participants in the meeting, which may include members of the public who have also received invites to the meeting. Okay, do we have any apologies, substitutions or declarations of interest?
Convener, we have an apology from Councillor Nelson. Move to a roll call.
Yep.
Can the following councillors please indicate if they're present at the meeting? Councillor Brooks.
In chamber.
Councillor Cassidy.
In chamber.
Councillor Clotterby.
Chamber.
Councillor Crowther.
Present in chamber.
Councillor Curley.
Present in chamber. Just.
Councillor Jackson.
Present remotely.
Councillor McCabe.
Present in chamber.
Councillor McCormick.
In chamber.
Councillor Quinn.
Present chamber.
Councillor Robertson.
Present in the chamber.
Are there any declarations of interest?
So
Just for information, only looking at the objective test, I'm going to stay in the chamber, but item 5, I'm a member of a Applied Homes Board, and item 12, I'm a regular substitute on SPT.
okay, thank you.
For yourself, convener as well. Item number 6, the council representatives on the RI board, RIPH board.
Okay. Okay. In case any of you were wondering, sorry. Plus.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to clear a connection following items on the agenda. Item number 5, due to membership of the Applied Homes Board. Item number 6, due to membership of the Riverside and Applied Board. Item number 7, due to still being a member of Applied Plan. And item number 10, because of the content of the paper, discusses the partnership with RSLs through my membership of the Applied Homes Board. But looking at the objective test, I don't think any of these connections warrant a point that I will have to declare an interest, so therefore I will stay in the chamber. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was going to say, it's not that Stuart started to lose his hair. He's unwell just now, so wish him a speedy recovery. Eddie's going to send an informal gently help with the questions as well. Just before we go through the agenda, item number 11 has been deleted from today's agenda, and item number 6 is a private report, and I would suggest that we take that at the end of the agenda with your agreement. Okay? Okay, moving on to item number 2, it's the Environment Regeneration Revenue Budget as at the 31st of October 2023. Matt, you want to take the floor?
Thank you, Convener. Yes, this is the normal revenue report. I'll draw your attention to paragraph 1.3. The committee is currently showing an overspend of £177,000, which is an improvement on last cycle of £25,000. I would remind members, though, that there's an underlying pressure in there of round about £250,000 to do with the parking income shortfall. So without that, the committee would actually be in a small surplus, and that parking deficit is going forward through the budget process as a pressure, so should be addressed and shouldn't be with us next year. So that'll give us a clean start. There's a couple of additional recommendations to draw your attention to. That's all 2.2, and it's environment. This is to do with the trade waste contract, which started on the 1st of January, the new contract did. It's a reduced price, and we're returning part of the budget to the inflation contingency based on that reduced price. 2.4, there's been a corporate fees and charges inflation of 5% awarded for the next 2 years. That's not quite enough to bring the trade waste back into a break-even position, so we're proposing a slightly larger uplift of 10% this year, 5% next year, and that brings us back to break-even. We're asking committee to approve that. And I'll also draw attention to 2.3, where I make reference to the parking report elsewhere in the agenda. I've jumped the gun slightly in that. It's not on this agenda. I believe that's coming to the March committee, so apologies for that. I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks very much, Matt. Any questions for Matt, Stephen?
Yeah, If you understand the relation between paragraph 2.1 Riverford projected overspend 177,000 and the violence being requested in Appendix 5, where we're looking at giving back essentially 168,000 to the inflation contingency because the new contract's going to save money. I'm presuming that the 177 allows for that return, and I suppose what's the explanation for why we're returning that money when the committee's got a project overspend?
Through self-convener, without going into too much details of the previous contract, the members will be aware that the contract price did increase quite significantly, and a large environment was awarded to this committee to allow for that. We then went out to tender, and members approved that tender late in last year, and that contract started 1st of January. Those contract prices have reduced, so it's only fair to return that inflationary element back to the inflation contingency.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the process, right, but that still leaves the committee with £177,000 overspend, and if we didn't return that environment 168,000, we'd have a £9,000 overspend. I'm just trying to understand the rationale for that.
Mark, do you want to come on?
Yeah, Convener, thank you. I can understand the council's queries over that, but say that the inflation award was given from PNR and now it's returned to PNR when it's not needed. That's the rationale behind it. It does, as you say, leave us in an overspend. I suppose really we're moving that overspend around if we don't return that money, but the money relates to the contract, and the contract inflation has been dealt with through the inflation contingency, so it's fair to return that money. I would remind you though that is going forward as budget pressure, as you'll be aware, and it shouldn't be with us next year, so it should be a one-off and return us to a small, hopefully, surplus in the committee. And we'll work towards the end of the year. I know Stuart, these officers are looking at trying to rein in some of the budgets and try and bring that back to a break-even position as well.
Okay, Kristen.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? No, don't see anyone else. We agree with that recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay, item 3 is the Environment Regeneration Capital Programme Progress Report for 23 to 26. Aidan.
Thanks, Convener. I won't go through every project, but I'll just highlight where perhaps was in progress since the report was drafted. So, the West Baltic project, in fact, has been on site since the 8th of January, forming the strong and works, with the main works commencing at the start of next week. The Greater Replacement project, the main contract works are now complete, with the exception of snagging, and the new gas main via SGN is also waiting completion. The Green Town Hall roofing project, the contractor appointed start date on the 29th of January, and the scaffolding will start to be in place in the early stages of that contract, which will impact the council's car park, and that will be unavailable for the duration of the project. That's the committee. Report with recommendations and happy to transfer.
Okay, thanks, Aidan. Stephen, is your line?
There is a legacy light, but I was going to come in anyway.
Okay.
So paragraph 3.8 talks about the comet replica replacement. There obviously has been some coverage in the Greener Telegraph on the back end of this report, and I think it would be helpful just to sort of give a wee bit more detail in terms of where we are in relation to that. I know Councillor Cully could probably give that update, but I think it is important for the committee to understand sort of the stage we're at in terms of looking at the options. And the second point was what I raised with regard to paragraph 3.45 in stream joint venture board. I didn't declare an interest as a the joint venture board. I don't think it's necessary, but we are on sort of programme for completion of the initial works by the end of February. I think it would be useful to arrange a site visit for the committee sometime in March to see what the circa £10 million has been spent on.
Okay, Aidan.
Okay, through your convener, in terms of the comment, there has been work ongoing through the comment subgroup, looking at how a replica could be put in place and the direction of our subgroup has to be looked at a model that could be potentially made in Jessamine, and that's a very specific material. As it indicates in the report, it's a limited number of providers out there who could address that. And so I'm taking some advice from one particular sculptor as to how we go about that process and specify that, because obviously the potential cost of providing this would be something that would subject to competitive tender and a proper procurement process. So at present, that process and advice is still ongoing, and it will then need to go back to the subgroup to conclude whether or not that is the final direction, and we are typically the progress to procurement, I suppose. But at the moment, I would say we probably don't have enough information to prepare a tender, and that's why I'm seeking that further advice.
But are we hopeful that potentially by the next meeting of this committee we might have sort of a clearer idea of the direction of travel?
Again, subject to that briefing, subject to that process is ongoing just now, and the officers from technical services being satisfied that they've got enough that they can pull together a specification. It is possible to bring that back to the subgroup and then get a direction, but again, we need to see how far we get with the current discussions.
Okay.
And the site visit potentially.
Certainly, I'll take that back to Stuart and arrange something through Stuart.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Stephen. 3.6, advises about emergency powers being used, and I fully understand the reasons why that. It's interesting that it looks like a successful contract has been appointed, but it's missing, the name's missing from public papers. I just wondered, obviously, for openness and transparency, the fact we use the emergency powers and we've chosen not to name, and there may be a legal reason. I'm happy to take any understanding from legal, but I'd be interested in getting the name, because the name of the contract is successful in a public domain for openness and transparency. And second, if I may, convener, 3.26 and 3.27 talks again about our wonderful cycleways. So when do we actually have the opportunity to see what they're going to be like? We keep on hearing from from officers that the work's going ahead and we're working on detailed design, etc. But members never, or this committee certainly never seem to get sight of those. And sometimes it can be too late for elected members to have a valuable input. So I just wondered, from your point of view, Convener, is this process acceptable to you, or should we be having detailed designs at the early stage for elected members to look at?
Okay. Eddie.
Yeah, through the convener, there's no reason it was omitted from this paper. It's part of the duty, and Gordon can confirm that, as Gordon's dealing with them at the moment. And Gordon can come in again and clarify around cycle lanes, but my understanding is that we are still waiting on a number of the detailed designs. It has been discussed at this committee previously about the limitations of how much we can take back to committee without impacting the overall progression and ability to progress within a reasonable timescale. So what was agreed at the previous committees was that we would consult with individual ward members in terms of schemes in their wards as and when that information was available, and that is what I understand officers are doing and will continue to do. And some of the larger schemes are subject to public consultations, which you'll have seen in the local press as well. Gordon, I don't know if you want to come in and maybe add to that.
Paul?
No, I've got nothing further to add to that, Eddie. You're right, the designs are still in the early stages. We don't have any drawings to show you, so at the moment I can't give you them, but we will give them to the ward members that the routes are going through for comment on them.
If I make it clear, there's anguish within the community about the volume and quality of cycle lanes versus the quality and the volume of quality roads for vehicle travel. So there is a high interest in the public, and I acknowledge that elected members whose wards are impacted by this will see them, but I'm just wondering, is that sufficient for yourself? Due to the high interest of the public, there's a few people who think the whole thing should be scrapped, but that's not the wish or the instruction of this committee.
Is it possible, Gordon, for the information to be passed to all members as opposed to just the ward members?
Yeah, as I suppose the only thing I'd point out about the road and the cycle network is that the new hierarchy is pedestrians first, cyclists, buses and everything else, and I think the cars last in the list, unfortunately, and that's the route we're going down now.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks. For yourself, Convener. I think it's only right to speak about 3.5 West Blackhall Street. I mean, West Blackhall Street has been a project that's been on our books for years and years and years. So it's really just to thank everybody involved, Gordon and his team for finally getting it off the mark, to our partners, Sustrans, SPT, for coming up with the partial funding for this year. We know there's issues about following years, but I think given the fact that this has been ongoing for many years now, I think it's great to at least get a start date. So it's really just to thank all those involved, especially Gordon and his team from the council. We do know that by doing West Blackhall Street, you're not going to get shops automatically come back into it. We know the whole bit about doing West Blackhall Street is to make sure that from our point of view, the street is got the right ambience around it to try and attract private entrepreneurs in, to make sure that they do take up the vacant shops that are there. So for me, it's just to thank all those. It's been a long process, and I'm just delighted that, at least for this year anyway, we're going to see the progress that we have done, and it's just to thank all those involved.
Yeah. Okay, Chris.
Thank you, Michael. Just a couple of points to maybe just a note, something that's in the report for me. The first one is just with respect to the Waterfront Leisure Complex. It notes there's been a lot of life cycle works, and there's going to be a significant amount of works required in the immediate future. I note that there's still a temporary compression unit for the ice rink, etc. outside, and obviously points to the fact that we're looking at later on about a heat transfer, etc. and these sort of arrangements. And we're just wondering, what is the long-term plan for that? Because obviously at one point we're taking heat out of one thing to create the frozen water, and we've got the heat in the pool we want to try and do. So I'm just trying to see what is officers thinking about the long-term future of that facility with respect to that. So just a wee comment about seawalls, retaining walls. We've got a note here about the 100k that was established in the 2021 budget. Obviously that is to identify possible capital works related to the seawall defences. Just wondering whether or not I can have commentary on that. Maybe something can be brought back to another committee or subsequent to this committee about whether or not we need to identify further monies for respect to that or for ongoing inspections. Because obviously we've done a course of work, we identified, but there's going to be possibly a requirement for doing ongoing inspections once we've identified all these works. And I'll stop there just for a second if you just answer those two.
Okay, the Waterfront works.
Yeah, through you, Convener. As noted within the report, the chiller replacement is something that is currently at that detailed design stage. So rather than just replace the current equipment with the same type of equipment, which, as you're quite right to point out, it doesn't put any heat back into the pool. Currently, we are proposing to change that from an air cooled unit to a water cooled unit, which will allow that heat transfer to happen. So you will use less utilities and waste less heat. So that is the current design that we're taking forward, and it is going to take another month or so to get that to point to we can tender it. So the temporary units will be there until we get out to tender. I would tender the turn and get it on site, but that is certainly the intention. It is something that aligns with our net zero action plan and utility savings, and it is forming part of a funding that we put into the facades fund, and we may get some external funding on that, which we're going to do. But regardless, we're taking that forward anyway. On the second one, the seawalls and the retaining walls, it is a difficult ask to identify everything that we actually have an ownership in, and B, then keep on top of the survey and ongoing maintenance of all of those assets. So that 100,000 is made available to start that process, get as much of the survey work done as possible, and then identify where we need to prioritise some future capital investment where we need to do more major repairs. It started, and we can have obviously brought back a very brief summary indicating that there will be some major repairs required at the roadblock and the A8. And I know that's a subject that we need to clarify the ownership again. So there's a legal process we go through for every single area that we own, and just to identify the liabilities that the council has. We have not finished the exercise, and there's still quite a bit to be done. But we are prioritising some priority works in the Gale Waterfront, seawall. That's out to tender at the moment. That's identified from the surveys that we have, and we've identified some work needs to be done at Guru. Again, not subject to tender, but it will put pressure on capital allocations going forward, as we identify what needs to be. But survey work is ongoing, and it's a process that will take some much more, a bit more time.
Yeah, thanks. Just to supplement
Yeah,
on
no,
that, I think the crux of my question was just whether or not that this will create an ongoing revenue pressure as well, or this is this something to be managed within existing revenue budgets for inspection, or is it something that we'd have to come back again?
I think potentially it is going to create a revenue pressure, and the exact amount of that we need to understand as soon as we've got full asset register of how much needs to be resurveyed. But there is a cost here, you're correct, to resurvey these blocks, and we should be doing that at intervals that are appropriate. At the moment, that's something that hasn't been done for a while.
And just as me, just a couple of small points. Just on the second walking safer streets, I know there's been a lot of there's a lot of text here about what's been progressed by officers, and I was just wondering whether for future clarity, would it be possible to tie these back to our strategy, which we last seen in August? And basically what I'm just talking about, because in our strategy we talk about routes 1.3, 2.3, that kind of thing. It'd be useful if we could actually have that tied back to the strategy, so we can actually then see what routes we're talking about specifically in that. So that's just a comment on that. That would help my understanding reading these reports. And finally, just a note really. I note that 3.29 officers are noting completion of the Glasgow train station access improvement works. And obviously that included both the access to platforms, but also the additional works to the park and ride. Now, hopefully in the future that will have a big impact on people being able to use the station more efficiently, and also impact on accessibility. And obviously there's been a number of members who have campaigned in this issue in the past, including Jim McLeod, so just and Stephanie Hurrell, who is a local resident. So just want to mention the fact that this is a long-term in fruition. It's come along, and also to thank officers for their involvement in the project, which I think has really added a lot of value, because the connection to Park and Ride will really make a big difference to that project going forward. Thank you.
Okay, Chris. Yeah.
I think there's a
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so my point's just under 3.16 and 3.5. So 316 is the Binions site. So good news that we're finally got a ward councillor meeting next week to meet up with the Green Action Trust. It's just to note that obviously the funding, we're nearly approaching 2 years since the funding was allocated. So some of the neighbours who are really enthusiastic, their enthusiasm is waning a wee bit because there's a lack of confidence that they're finally going to see this through. So it's really just a plea if we can try and, now that we'll get Green Action Trust involved, to push that along, so that we don't miss out in another summer, pretty much, for the neighbours there that are just looking into a sort of waste ground. So that's just my point for the day. And under 3.35, we're talking about the consultation going out for the solution to the Larkfield Road, George Road junction. It's just, it said it will commence in February, so I was just checking that we're on target for that, bearing in mind we're kind of almost hitting February.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, this is the school site and consultation on the junction.
Yep, through you can be out, and so that means maybe quite a bit of time, we never have consultants on board who are right forward, and what we need that is to do those to then identify a package of works and development for the funding that's available in that envelope, and then we to get that to the end stage and get it tendered. So every effort will be made to do that and not miss this summer, but there is a process to go through, a linear process, and to get through that. So I'm afraid I can't give you a guarantee, but we will do everything we can to move it forward. On the Larkfield Road, George Road, officers are still targeting consultation in February, and that's what has been worked on. And what I would say, Mr. Hurley, is that there is no capital allocation for any follow-up works to come out of this consultation, so just to bear that in mind.
Okay, what again, just to add to that, the junction?
No, thank you. No,
So,
it's ongoing, and we will be consulting on it in February.
okay. Okay.
Okay, thanks. So it's to be a cheap option then.
Free option.
Okay, option.
I think the term is within budget.
We'll wait and see. what we've come up with. Thanks.
Okay, any other members? Sorry, Stephen.
Yeah, I was wanting to come back in the back of my good friend Councillor Brooks's comments around the cycling route projects. And it's to, I suppose, to understand what Councillor Brooks is ultimately looking for, because I did see the comments in the Great Telegraph from his group leader, Councillor Wilson, who's obviously a representative on the board of SPT, and Councillor Brooks is a substitute, hence why they had that nice picture in about the new investment in Greenock. As I understand it, this programme is part of a national strategy. So we've got a national strategy where the government is keen to improve cycling, walking and safer routes and safer streets. And we're getting ring-fence funding to implement this national strategy locally, and we are developing schemes here. Now, the money that's we're getting for this cannot be spent in renewing our pavements and our carriageways, etc. So it's ring-fenced for that particular purpose. So we either take this funding and we design these schemes in line with the national strategy to make our streets safer for pedestrians and for cyclists, or we turn the money down and say we're not going to do that. You can spend the money elsewhere. We're not going to get the money to spend on resurfacing our roads and pavements. Now, there certainly has been recently suggestions from SPT that, and I think we've seen it from bus companies as well, that cycling routes, not just in Inverclyde but elsewhere, are impacting on the efficiency of the bus services. And I think SPT's view is that we're spending too much money on cycling routes and not enough money supporting bus services and bus routes. Now, if that's a real debate, and that's what Councillor Wilson is effectively suggesting, we shouldn't be implementing any more of these cycle routes on our roads, not obviously on our cycleways. I think that's a debate I would be perfectly happy to have within this chamber and for officers to give us a report on, and then see what the view of the committee is. But I don't know if that is what the Conservative and Unionist group are looking for.
If I may, thank you very much. Thanks to Councillor Gabriel for bringing us back in on this issue. The challenge is we wouldn't know that unless we can see the detailed plans, or at least the development of the detailed plans, because there are many cycle routes that are 100% on pavements and will have no impact on vehicle access, and I'll use the phrase buses rather than vehicles, because we've been told of the hierarchy, but on this occasion I'll use the word bus rather than vehicle. So yeah, the challenge is if a new cycle route or an improved cycle route is going to be to the detriment of a bus, then we don't see that until very, very late on in the process. So that was my initial context. And I would be happy for officers to bring back understanding of where we have the hierarchical structure, which is instructed by obviously the Scottish Government, and quite clearly, Councillor Gates is accurate, that money is ring-fenced, we can't spend it on potholes. If constituents think we can, it's as good as a public meeting. If only we could get that over to them, that'd be fantastic. So I'm all for having a debate about where the new cycle route or a redesign of cycle route impacts bus access. We should have a debate here in the chamber.
Could we just go back? I mean, we've obviously had briefings in the past. I think it would be useful to have an all-member briefing to look at whether it be all of them or individual ones in a series of reviews. And I think there's merit in having a more detailed report out with a capital report on the strategy and how we see this investment improving obviously the safety of cyclists and walkers, but how it impacts potentially obviously on travel times for buses and cars. I think there's merit in having a report to look at that, but I also think, as I said, it would be useful to have all members briefing or briefings.
Okay, good to know. Yeah, I'll take that back to the team. I think we just need to be careful about how that impacts on the ability to spend it.
Yes, no, I'm not talking about stopping things in the meantime, but I think it would be useful to understand the implications of the strategy.
Okay, anything else?
I just add the comments about the hierarchy. The hierarchy is there for a good reason. if people can walk to the work or to need to get to the walk, cycle, take the bus. But generally, if the infrastructure is properly designed, then the top of the pyramid of the hierarchy flows freely, and that includes people walking, cycling, and people taking public transport. And when I've seen stuff that's been designed in other areas, public transport is ingrained within that streetscape and is able to move freely. So I don't think there's an issue for having that discussion, but I certainly think that the officers and the things being proposed will ensure that what they call public transport can still remain and what it needs to be an important part of the transport mix in Edinburgh.
Can we just come back in principle, I'm supportive of cycle lanes and making it safer for pedestrians, but the roads in Inverclyde are very much different from the roads in other parts of the region. I mean, I regularly visit the East End of Glasgow for a particular purpose, and you've got very, very wide roads in the East End of Glasgow where you've got dedicated bus lanes and cycle lanes, etc. So there are certainly places where every need can be accommodated. But I mean, I've heard criticism before by a local based bus company about the roads infrastructure here and a suggestion that we could have a dedicated bus lane here. I would find it difficult to see how we could have a dedicated bus lane up the A8, to be perfectly honest, or anywhere else in Inverclyde. So we've got pretty narrow roads, even our main roads are pretty narrow roads. So, and there is undoubtedly that debate, and I've heard that. I went to the event in Glasgow. We were talking about the bus strategy for the West Region. I've the Glasgow City Region Cabinet. We had the Chief Executive of SPT along recently as well, and there is a real issue around the efficiency of the bus services and how we can make buses go quicker to suit the needs of customers. And I do think that we need to think carefully when we are implementing these schemes about whether there would be a detrimental impact in bus service particularly. Yeah. So it's not anti-cycle lane, but clearly there are practical issues that we need to think about.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think though, you have to look at the history of the roads in Inverclyde, and the history of roads in Inverclyde. The A770 and the A78 are generally quite wide roads, and the reason for that is they used to have trams running along them. So we're now looking at how we're looking at that curb to curb, back to curb, and how we can then design these things for the future. And if it's designed properly, we can make sure that we prioritise both cycling, walking and public transport. But I think it's a good debate to have, because certainly one thing I want to make sure is that people are not put off using buses by what we do in this infrastructure. And there's maybe a point I'll come on at the level of funding in a minute. That we need to ensure that buses and public transport are part of everything we do in Inverclyde, as well as cycling and walking.
Okay. For the Paul.
Thanks, Claire. Just a question about 3.29. When are we expecting the report back from the report for those arguments affecting Wednesday TRO?
So you give me, I think we're still waiting a date for again, but Gordon, is that correct? We'll have a date?
The week beginning hold on, I put my calendar up here. 18th of March, sometime that week beginning the 18th of March, we will have a hearing that week at some point with the reporter to go through the 20 mile an hour objection.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Don't see anything in the chat. Can we get a recommendation? Okay. Okay, item number 4 is the Housing Upfund update report. Jennifer, are you put this first?
Thank you, Convener. This report gives an update on the progress in respect to the Green Nickel Living Up project. Since accepting the award, the governance groups have been set up, including ones with the Council, Oakmall and Transport Scotland. Contract awards have been made for project management and contractors to design stage. Survey work has been undertaken and work packages designed. For the roads elements, the design team have had progressive discussions with Transport Scotland. Traffic surveys have been carried out in the junction, and based on these surveys, 2 options are presented within the report for the replacement of the building. Option 1A is a compact footprint which benefits active travel arrangements, and option 1B is a fully compliant junction for growth in traffic, but also allows for some active travel arrangements. In addition, the public realm layouts have been developed alongside these options. With regards to the project timelines, latest programme gives indicative dates for demolition of the Oak Mall elements commencing in Q2 2024, and roads demolition contract to commence in Q3 2024, and contract completion remains at Q1 2026. As time progresses, we are having ongoing discussions with our corporate communications team on a detailed communication strategy aligning with the key milestones of the project. The committee is asked to note the progress and note that there will be further reports brought back to the committee on a regular basis to provide an update. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, Chairman, thank you. Jim?
Stephen, you want to go first?
Oh, no.
Are you sure?
I'm sure this is in your.
Refer to me, Dr. Jim, on you go.
Yeah. Jennifer, a nice easy one for me. Obviously, the Greenock's going to transform incredibly over the next 2 years. But one of the bits that we've got to do is make sure we take the population with us. So at 3.8, where our sort of short shop fell through, and it says here we're looking at another shop in the mall, another location. How far are we on that? Because I think it is important that both for the West Blackhall Street, but more importantly, the levelling up, that the people of Inverclyde and especially Greenock see what's been proposed. So have you got any idea of, are we close to getting another location?
At the moment, I don't have another location confirmed, but we are working on that, and we will make sure that there are displays similar to what we were proposing for the other unit to be within the town centre so that people can see what is proposed.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was going to ask a question around the Glebe building, and I know there's sensitivities here because that building is in private ownership. So obviously we're in the public, so we need to be careful what's said. But I did see a big splash in the Greenock Telegraph a few weeks ago about an exciting plan for a local company to buy over the Glebe building and convert it into an arts centre. And I think the talk at the time was the potential for, obviously the building has to be acquired, and there is some funding within the level up and then potentially acquire the building. But in terms of funding any investment in that building, there was talk of a bid to the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund. And it would just be useful to hear from Jennifer, because I do understand that basically there is no funding available next year. I don't know whether it'll be in the future for the Regeneration Capital Grant Fund, but just to understand, is that funding available? And if not, are there any alternative sources of funding potentially could be used for this building?
Yeah.
That's something I think I'll probably need to bring back, if that's okay, because within the levelling up funds, it comprises of the elements. Obviously, the building is mentioned, and it's got some proposals in there that are being taken forward by the community group. But it's the funding that we have available is against the demolition and the road elements at the moment. So if it's okay with you, convener, and okay with Councillor McCabe, then I'll bring that one back at a later date.
Yeah, it'll be useful to get a fuller report on. I mean, I think we should be having regular updates in this project. I think we should have an update to every committee on this project. I think it's that important, and I think it would be useful to get more information on that particular project in the next report. Now, it's an exciting project, but I think the danger is we raise aspirations and expectations. But my understanding is that the draft Scottish budget, basically, there is no funding for the Regeneration Capital Grant for at least the next year. And so that certainly wouldn't be a source of funding for this project. There may well be an alternative source of funding, I don't know. But I think it would be important in the next report that we do get an update on that particular project.
Okay.
Thanks.
No, I just thought to say Christopher. That's pointing to you, so you're in first.
Looking at what the wording of section 3.2, where we're saying that a new space will be created for a new learning portal and campus. I'm just wondering if we can get an update on where discussions are with the college in terms of their inclusion in that part of this.
Again, the discussions are ongoing, and that has been with the director, with the West College Scotland. So again, I'll try and get an update on that and bring that one back ahead of the next committee. But the main focus at the moment has been on the design of the roads in the Oak Mall.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. I was going to ask if to leave, but I know that's already been asked, and we'll get some further details in the next committee meeting. Other questions then relate specifically to the roads alignment and the demolition of the Oak Mall. I know the options here, and I know these things are iterative and have probably changed a little bit, but these are sort of like the crux of what we're getting, which look very similar to the layman's eye. What I was wondering, looking at these, and conscious of the fact of the discussion we've had earlier, and I was going to bring this up at this meeting anyway. Obviously, we see here we've got the active travel covered here, and we've also got the cars covered. But what I'm concerned about, and what I'd like to get some information from officers is with respect to consultation on the arrangement for public transport for buses. Because obviously, if we're now demolishing the High Street, the Oak Mall, and bringing the High Street down to street level, we're effectively going to create new desire lines for public transport within the Greenock Town Centre. So obviously, if you're going to want to go to the Oak Mall, the obvious place you're going to want to stop with the bus is outside of it. It's not within the footprint of the roads. I'm just wondering if that's because that will be ancillary, that will be developed in the future. So that would be quite good to get that sort of information about how that's been developed, that sort of public transport aspect of this, because you want to make sure that that's in at the start when you come to this project, because we've got a great opportunity here to try and create new connections for public transport, both with the Oak Mall and also the municipal buildings, and to a certain extent the train station, which is at the moment is isolated from really a lot of the public transport within the area. So we've got a great opportunity here to try and rebuild a lot of these connections as part of this process. And it might not be part of this project, but I'd like to make sure we don't do anything that actually stops us, precludes us doing that kind of thing in the future.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. I absolutely agree. We don't want to preclude anything in the future, and that would be something that would be subject to more detailed design coming forward. But at the moment, it has been modelled with the public transport included in there. And yeah, we would want to be engaging with the public transport services within Inverclyde as we take the project forward.
Okay.
Yeah. So are we still at the stage of the project? Because I was conscious of the fact that we're going to be setting the thing moving with regard to getting contracts, getting contractors involved, starting the demolition. It's still at an appropriate time that we can this can be input within the project efficiently and at the appropriate time.
Yes.
Thank you. And just supplementary, I note that on page 26 we've got a typical diagram what could possibly be the result or the interim solution for the area, which obviously is a lot of green space as we develop the what was going to be put back in there. And I note there's a comment here that says area to extend the demolition zone, so there's showing an additional area demolition. Is it possible to confirm that area demolition is now part of the project?
Give me a wee second, I'm just going to bring the report up. Yeah, so that is an area that is in the demolition, but the detail of that is not obviously considered, is not within that plan, and that was just recently getting discussed to be agreed.
Okay, so that's very good, because that's quite a good improvement to the project. So I'm glad to see that demolition is going to occur. Thank you.
Okay, can we agree recommendations? Okay. Item number 5 is Inverclyde Strategic Housing Investment Plan for 24 to 29. Martin.
Thank you, Convener. This is the annual Strategic Housing Investment Plan, which, if you're aware, is a rolling 5-year programme, which we update every year. I suppose it's probably safe to say that over 23-24, we've been somewhat disappointed with kind of progress on the ship. However, we do have a couple of larger projects that are coming in 24-25, specifically Duncan Street and Bay Street, that will use the majority of our planning assumption from the Scottish Government for that year. So The main projects, ongoing projects, are detailed in section 4. So those are, as I say, former health centre at Duncan Street and the Bay Street project. Members will be aware that there were some concerns about the progress of the Bay Street project due to the failure of merchant homes, but we have had some reassurance that that project is still likely to go ahead and is not a threat at the moment. Other than that, we have Quarry Drive, Kilmacombe, which is affordable housing linked to the private development there, which will probably come through in the next year or two. We have the rebuild of the Strone Farm units, which it's safe to say requires significant work and rebuild in order to bring them back to the standard required following the bankruptcy of the builder in that project. We have Clune Park, which is the longer term project members will be aware of. And under 4.6, we mentioned additional projects. We did actually have some discussion this week on a project of 14 units in Burtmire and Port Glasgow, specialist units, which could easily be on site in 24-25, but we didn't have sufficient detail to include them in the SHIP beyond a passing reference. So that will be another project, probably funded actually from our 25-26 RPA. Members will be aware that the bulk of these projects involve national RSLs. Our local RSLs have, I suppose it's safe to say, pulled back a wee bit from development. Now, that isn't unique to Inverclyde. I think there has been a withdrawal from development across Scotland because of the cost of borrowing. However, we will continue to work with our local RSLs to try and encourage new build projects going forward. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Steve?
Yeah, thanks, convener. Thanks to Martin for the report. Obviously, there's a number of good projects on here, and if they all come to fruition, they will make a difference. But I suppose a few questions. First one is, in paragraph 3.3, you talk about the motorhomes division have notified us of the resource planning assumption between 22, 23 and 25, 26 and 29 million. You'll be aware, Martin, the draft Scottish budget has a significant cut to the affordable housing programme. Have we been notified of any potential reduction in that funding which may impact on these projects? Second question around paragraph 3.10, when we're talking about the acquisition programme, which I very much support, and we're looking at acquiring some 40 homes on the market, talking about a purchase price of subsidy rate of about 50%, £50,000 per property, so 100 grand. What are we seeing in terms of the market conditions? Is that, I think it would probably be pretty challenging to acquire 40 properties in the current market conditions, because there seems to be a lot of interest in properties for various purposes. And the last question was just around the Bay Street project. I'm a bit more reassured by what you've told us. But obviously, the housing association is Sanctuary Housing Association. So at what point does Sanctuary take ownership of the development? Is it after the project's completed, or do they currently have ownership of the development and they're appointing the contractors? It would be helpful to know what status the project has got.
Okay, so there's quite a bit there. If I could start with the resource planning assumption, we haven't been informed formally of the changes to our resource planning assumption. We did meet More Homes this week, and we did ask that very question to say, right, what can you give us figures? Because I could foresee this question being asked. They are not able to give us that at the moment because they're still working through their figures on a national basis. What it does mean, what the sort of working reduction that they're working to means is that we are effectively maximising our budget for 24-25, and we don't have much space for anything additional in 24-25. However, I don't think beyond that will have a significant impact. But as I say, we're still awaiting actually formal figures from them. and they were unable to give them to us this week. So that's as best I can do to answer that. On 3.10, I suppose there's there are three reasons for purchase. Stock consolidation, securing stock where there's limited supply, and securing stock for households with particular requirements. Now, in the case of the first, I think it's probably safe to say that we would expect property prices in those circumstances maybe to come in nearer the level of funding, because it will probably be properties where there are significant issues and significant improvements required. The challenge is round about the third, which is securing properties for particular households. And in that case, we would additionally look to support that through our affordable housing fund, which the council gains from development. But also we're going to look as part of the local housing strategy at improving the process, finding out where there are shortcomings in it. And if there are shortcomings in terms of cost, which I suspect there will be, then we'll go back to the Scottish Government to look at renegotiating how that actually works. So it's a work in progress, to be perfectly honest. We have recently had some acquisition using the acquisition funding at a higher level than this to acquire properties for the people who were actually flooded out in Kilmacombe Road. So Scottish Government has shown a willingness to give a little and improve the funding position when required. So I think there's a need for a better conversation to take that forward. And I'm sorry, I've totally lost your third point, Councillor.
Well, it was about Bay Street in terms
Bay
of
Street.
where
Yes.
you are in terms of Bay Street.
So Bay Street, our understanding is that Bay Street was now likely to be developed by the Ambassador Group rather than Merchant Homes. And I think it will be as a turnkey development, which means effectively that the funding will come in at the end of that project. But I will check the exact mechanism and come back to you if that's okay.
Yeah, that's helpful. Can I just come back and give you that? I mean, I think it would be helpful if we did get an update report once we have clarity on the impact of the reduction and the affordable homes programme. And I think it would be useful if throughout the year we are getting regular updates on the progress of these projects as well, because they are important projects.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, Martin, thanks. Greg or Chris, Greg?
I don't know.
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Yes, as a welcome report, it's great to see the ship again has developed and there's some exciting things happening. Obviously, 1.3 identifies the ship identifies the role of the Strategic Housing Authority, and I just wonder whether, as the Strategic Housing Authority, whether we can support or pressure's the wrong word maybe, the RSLs, so we're signatory to the Armed Forces Covenant, and there's a major of live constituency work just now with veterans who are struggling with properties. Not all RSLs, up to my knowledge, are signatories to the Armed Forces Covenant. So through the ship, I know that we've mentioned key workers is mentioned, but nowhere in the ship is veterans mentioned. Is that an omission that we could look at? Or is there anything we can do to support ourselves fulfil our Armed Forces Covenant, if not their own?
So interestingly enough, this was one of you might recall the two or three areas that were highlighted by the Scottish Government in our LHS were included housing for veterans and housing for the armed forces. That's something that we will look to take forward through our LHS delivery groups to see if there are any gaps. I'm aware that obviously a couple of the larger RSLs are signatories to the Armed Forces Covenant. So River Clyde Homes and I think also Clough are both signatories to the Armed Forces Covenant. So we can certainly have that discussion. And if we are finding that there are gaps in provision, then we'll take that forward through the local housing strategy.
Thanks, Stevie.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Just Just really just to note a couple of things with respect to the Queen Park estate. I suppose looking at the table on page 65, my understanding from this is that we're expecting phase 2 of Queen Park, or programming in phase 2 of Queen Park, not starting to 28-29. Just if officers can confirm that's my understanding is correct.
So there is an element of putting a finger in the air here, and we hope that to be coming back to the committee with a Clune Park update in terms of, you know, timescales, etc., in the near future. So in a way, putting it in the table in that place is really just a marker for Scottish Government. I think there's certainly scope for that to be brought forward if that's at all possible.
Okay, thank you. And also we've had discussions in the past about the mix of the housing in Queen Park, and whether it's going to be affordable housing to buy or social rent, etc. And forgive me, I've been trying to rack my brains to try and work out the TLS, or three-letter abbreviations that's within the table. See the NSSE, what does that refer to?
That's the National Shared Equity Scheme.
New supply shared equity.
Yeah. New supply shared equity. Thank you very much.
I got the shared equity at the end, but I couldn't quite get the rest of it.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Sounds like my kids are landlord, I think you keep it in.
That's I didn't have a conversation for 20 years. The deal there. Nessie, as we used to call it.
Mark, and a comment, and please forgive me. It's with regard to the Old Green Academy site. There is meant to be affordable housing attached to that development as well. Does that appear anywhere in the SHIP or in our papers? Have I got that right, or have I got the wrong end of the stick in that one? Was there not affordable housing attached to that?
So my understanding is that the requirement for affordable housing applies to primarily to developments in the villages rather than actually all developments. Hence the requirement for some in the Kilmacombe Quarry Drive development. So my understanding is that there isn't in this site, but that's a discussion that we need to have with planning going forward through the local plan to see that if there are other sites in the future, that there is an element of that.
Okay.
Good.
I think, yeah. I'll check it out.
Martin, can I ask you about the units up at the Stone Farm?
Yes.
The flooding situation at the Kilmacombe Road kind of shone a light on the fact that there was units across the street practically across the street from the houses that could have possibly been used for the folk affected by the flooding in Kilmacombe Road if they'd been ready. I was quite kind of happy that Oak Tree, I was quite confident that Oak Tree are going to be able to get these properties completed.
So the latest we have from discussions with Oak Tree and from discussions with More Homes is that Oak Tree are going to tender to restart this project. Now, it will require some elements of demolition to start again and some completion. It's going to be a bit of a mix. But at the moment, and I suppose we have to take the assurances of the RSL as ultimately it's their project. But the assurances we are getting is that they will be taking that forward this year and are extremely hopeful that that will be completed. Now, you'll be aware that there was interest in further development next to that site, but unfortunately that fell through owing to the ground conditions. I think, like a lot of Inverclyde, the rock is very close to the surface and it made it impractical. However, we do have a commitment from Oak Tree that they will complete the 15 homes.
Okay, thanks, Martin. Okay, can we agree that condition? Okay, we'll take item 6 at the end of the agenda. Okay, so item 7 is a development plan scheme and participation statement, the local development plan. Daniel, you take this?
Yep, thank you, convener, and good afternoon to the committee.
The purpose of this report is to seek approval for the Council's draft development plan scheme and participation statement relative to the delivery of the new local development plan. The purpose of the development plan scheme is to set out how the next local development plan shall be prepared, including plans to engage the general public and consultees on the planning process. The development plan scheme also includes a timeline for delivery of the LDP. This is specified within section 4.1 of this report. The development plan scheme and participation statement represents the first of 6 key stages required by government to deliver the new style local development plan. This stage includes obtaining committee approval to engage the general public through a wide consultation process. Public consultation will target anyone within Inverclyde with an interest in planning issues, and participation will help prepare a plan that addresses the interest of those who live, work, visit and invest in the area. In undertaking a public consultation, the planning service will engage with a number of key stakeholders and groups which are detailed in section 310 of the report. This will also include an invitation to prepare local place plans, giving communities and local groups the opportunity to produce their own plans. Consultees will be able to provide comments, views and suggestions through the methods set out within section 11 of the report, while sections 3.8 and 3.12 set out considerations for underrepresented groups and those with protected characteristics. The development plan scheme and participation statement will be reviewed and updated annually with the local development plan's progression, and members are asked for their support and approval. I'm happy to answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Daniel.
Thanks, Convener. So just in terms of that point, Daniel, about targeted consultation for underrepresented groups or groups that are deemed maybe harder to engage with traditionally, what are the plans in terms of doing that? What methods do we think are going to help us to penetrate into those particular groups and individuals?
So first and foremost, engagement with yourselves, trying to identify through elected members in respective areas and respective parts of the local authority where there are any groups that we can help approach and give a considered and tailored approach to our consultation as opposed to a blanket approach. The report states that we will use a number of different methods, for example, our website, public events and things like social media. However, where appropriate, groups that we need to give a kind of, use the word again, tailored approach to that, then we'll certainly endeavour to do so, and we'll follow Scottish Government guidance on that particular matter. We've also gave early consideration to identifying local areas with specific footfall, for example, supermarkets where the general public will be passing by, and look to build on effective and wide engagement with members of the public. So in terms of groups that are perhaps underrepresented, we will speak to relevant stakeholders, relevant bodies, both internal and external to the council, to give consideration to that as we progress.
Okay, yep. Okay. Can we agree like that? Sorry, Rob.
Yeah, it's actually very similar. It's on 3.10, Daniel, so I wasn't too sure Councillor Roberts was going to ask. So it's more of a statement. I'm welcome to see that third sector organisations is on that list. I understand it's not an exhaustive list, and it's the plural. You haven't just inserted the TSI. So I think it's crucial that this third sector is bigger than our TSI, and I welcome that we have third sector organisations in plural there, and I do hope that third sector engage with this process to its fullest extent. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Ben. Okay, can we agree recommendations? Good. Okay, item number 8 is remembering together. Jennifer, we finish with us. Sorry, Eddie.
Thanks, Convener. The report seeks approval and support for the Remembering Together project and the installation of 5 alarms in parks across Inverclyde. Subject to committee approval, support project, further approval to be required 2 locations as outlined within the report of recommendation. So that's the committee approval and recommendation of the installation.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. Okay, questions, Chris?
Yeah, it's just with respect to Forestry Park. We've got my chair of the Glasgow Conservation Forum hat on here. I know that there's plans in place for redeveloping sections of Port Glasgow, Forest Park in Port Glasgow. And I'm just wondering, make sure we're not taking this in isolation, because obviously if these plans are progressing at the same time, there's an opportunity to try and make sure that they actually tie in. And I'm just wondering if officers can provide comment about that, about whether or not the actual location is set in stone, or will there be an opportunity to develop this Remembering Together project as part of the wider look at regenerating Coronation Park in Glasgow.
Absolutely, I don't see any problem in ensuring that we coordinate efforts and different projects across areas and look at all areas and make sure there's nothing that's going on impact that. So I'll take that back to the officers if we can say that I'll work and make sure that that's taken into account.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just a question, just to clarify. So I think it'd be useful. There's been some discussion now that the papers had come out. There's been some discussions within Google specifically about the project. So I think it was useful just to sort of clarify that this is purely Scottish Government funding, and the council's involvement is purely just to allocate the space and the land for them to continue with the project. So can I think it's useful just to clarify. I think I know the answer, but I think we just want to clarify that.
Yeah, because that's confirmed that is the case, yeah.
Okay, so, and the only involvement the council will have is allocating the funds and potentially the ongoing maintenance beyond the 5 years, because I believe that the project has 5 years funding to maintain the labyrinths going forward for those.
I'm not aware of the detail of that funding agreement, but yeah, property services will certainly be sorted on the maintenance implications, and they are generally low impact, low maintenance as far as we can determine from what we've provided so far. Yeah.
Okay, great. So, which is fantastic, and I'm glad that the project is taking shape now, and we're kind of at the final stages after that public consultation. My only question or potential concern would be, which I totally support, a labyrinth in Gourock. I think we might have two, if you include Lunders and Bay, but I think we had a debate whether Lunders and Bay was hitting onto the Inverkip side or whether it was near Gourock. But whether that site is the ideal, I think it's probably linked to Chris's concern there. Is the site that it's been chosen the correct site for this, just with the local knowledge? So really, I would like to potentially have a little look. Is there flexibility in what we agree today? I don't want to stop anything or postpone anything, but just to have a little look at that site and potentially get the community council involved in a kind of general discussion about what is the best site for Gourock within the park area and surrounding areas. Is that possible?
Well, the convener has further seen the recommendation for agreeing the use of the locations. There should be some flexibility within that. But I could come back to you.
Okay. I suppose there's kind of time constraints on this end of it, to be allocated as well, so it's not going to impact on.
So I'm not aware of the detail of this particular one, unfortunately, so I can't comment how quickly it's needed to be implemented, but I can take it away and go back to you.
Yeah, so I think what we're saying is, from a committee point of view, I'd like the decision to be noted that we're happy for the land within Gourock or around about the park be agreed, but if there's an element of flexibility about where exactly that is, with an element of consultation from ward councillors and the community council.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any difficulty in that in principle, but I think you would have to apply that to the other sites as well if you were going to have a degree of consultation, because there clearly hasn't been. We've not consulted with the relevant community councils, so I think you were going to do it for the Gourock site, you need to do it for the other sites, to be perfectly honest. I was also going to ask, this is the Scottish Government funded project, which I think has been taken forward through CBS Inverclyde with Rig Arts involved, etc. But the council did set aside money as well for our own memorial. So we've not had an update in some time in terms of where we are with that, or if the two merged into one. Because we were talking to you, for example, of some sort of memorial out there in Clyde Square.
it's not something that I have any knowledge of. I'm afraid I need to bring that back. So if there's some officers who may have been involved.
I think that would be useful to get.
Yeah. It's still my understanding that there still will be a council memorial outside them, so that we would have to put an update on that. And as far as the positioning of the labyrinths going forward, is it possible for us to revisit this and with more consultation with community councils, etc.?
Again, the convener's not having been involved in the detail of this. The report indicates there have been community consultation through regards and CVS, so I couldn't say whether or not these organisations have already been contacted. You know, I don't know. Okay.
I know we know about the site of the labyrinths in the last few days. So we're happy to agree that we're going to. Sorry, when you want to come in, Graham, you want to come?
It's a different point, but
Okay.
so I'm just keep going. If you want to complete this part.
Okay. When do you want to come in?
Yeah, so I think the consultation did take it up to a point, but I think we as the council element now is really agreeing the location of where they are within there. So I think that's the bit that potentially hasn't happened. You know, it's the council consulting with the community council about the land. So I think it's more the consultation on it from our point of view, the council having a discussion to see, are you happy with this specific site? So in principle, we're in agreement. So I think that's a lot of consultation going on about what sort of memorial or what, but I think we're now at the final stages of the location.
I know it could be spotted, but it's purely the only there's been any conversation about maybe a different location.
I honestly haven't been involved, so I can't give on that. No.
Okay. So, Graham, you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks. So, you know, when to pick up, kind of when to pick up on maintenance, and constituents have said, you know, we're good at putting things up and we're bad at maintaining them. So there's a 5-year funding, but this will put pressure on council revenue in year 6, 7 and 8 and on. And it's just to have the ask or to highlight it that constituents are concerned that we're spending, yes, it's got no money, it's not council money, but still taxpayers' money. We're spending money doing these good things that we all support, but yet you have the ability to actually maintain them past that funding. Now, okay, then we're all relying on the grant, all councils relying on the grant, whether it's government or council tax. We do realise there's pressures, and the more we build in the way of statues, labyrinths, or whatever it is, the more money it takes to maintain them. And it's just to highlight the constituents are asking questions.
Just to be clear, that money's not coming to the council. We're not handling that money. That money's going presumably to the third sector. So it's not council money.
Yeah, but just will we eventually have to maintain it in year 6?
So that's addressed in the report, isn't it? The concern is addressed in the report, and if we as a council don't want to take the risk that we end up with the maintenance, we could say no to these being located in council property. I wouldn't suggest that's a sensible idea, to be perfectly honest.
Well,
thanks for yeah. Councillor, you actually made one of the points that we were making earlier on. If we took more what Councillor Curran was saying, that we should widen that out actually to all the sites, you know, that consultation. I know it's been expressed by me, by residents in from Spain and the community council as well, that you know there's one of these memorials almost every one of our towns and villages, but Invercargill Bay actually don't have any. As Councillor Clinton mentioned, Livingston Bay is Invercargill is not an Invercargill. And speaking of my other eyes, the council champion, I'm pretty sure that community council have the opportunity to have their research.
okay, Paul. So I'm going to ask for legal things to come up with formal works going forward. It's acceptable for the committee.
So through you, so I suppose the question for the committee is, in terms of this recommendation, are we happy to give officers the green light to go ahead into the location set out in this report, or are you looking for something to come back to the committee with where these are going to be? Let's just bail out. Eddie is going on to whether there are time pressures on the funding question. So,
I think we're suggesting that before we make a decision on these sites, there should be a consultation with the community council. The practical issue that we have is the existing community councils are folding this month, and new community councils will potentially be formed next month at some point, or a few weeks later. So we are talking about whether it's tactical to have a consultation for the next meeting of this committee, in time to report back and make a decision on whether it's going to extend and how that. But I mean, I think this process has been going on for the best part of 2 years. So I'm not convinced that we'll necessarily load it up.
So would the committee be content that bullet point 1 at the end as a remit for officers to bring back a report on what consultations we're going to take today in response to that consultation before we greenlight these out?
I think it's about consultation with the relevant community councils.
Very happy with that. Yeah.
So, and so we'll make explicit for reasons as well.
Okay, McLean.
I'm happy for my point just be picked up with the officers.
Okay. Okay, moving on to item number 9, which is the Surface Water Management Local Change Adaptation Report. Edith.
Thanks, Convener. The report provides the committee an update on the progress of the council's existing flood risk management programme and the actions required to address identification and operating future priorities and funding funds. Follow up from the report brought to the Environment Committee, which are looking at the impacts for flooding event in the October last year. Appendix 1 provides a summary of the flood prevention scheme for to date and any areas that remain to be addressed, with an indicative list of future priority areas within Appendix 2, and that's been informed by the most recent flooding events. And as indicated within the report, we're seeking approval to appoint a temporary flooding engineer for a period of up to 2 years to develop surface water management plans and addressing other areas such as coastal change adaptation, utilising a proportion of the remaining flood action plan funding and the coastal change adaptation allocation. That's the committee approved the recommendations and the party that's the
thanks. Phil.
I'm sorry, that's a legacy.
Thank you. I welcome this report, and obviously I understand that the pressures that have been on officers to prepare the report based on the flooding that's been happening recently. A couple of things. At the last meeting, we discussed the surface water management. I remember I asked the officers if they would be able to engage with Scottish Water in particular about reservoir attenuation, about active management of the reservoirs around Inverclyde to try and create additional capacity at times of flooding events. I'm just wondering if officers will be able to provide some information about whether or not that's occurred and what is the fruits of that discussion. And secondly, with respect to my own ward, I've had representations from a number of residents with respect to the Gotter Water flood prevention plan. And obviously there's been a flood event just after Christmas, and the concern is that whether or not that has actually been able to actually mitigate flooding in that area. I just wonder if officers are able to advise if they've looked into that particular issue. And thirdly, just with respect to the indicative priority raised, and I presume there might be one or two other members of the committee who will be making suggestions. Of these ones here, one that strikes out to me, not been here, is actually the Glen Burn in Port Glasgow, because there was a significant flooding in the industrial estate, and though it didn't quite reach the housing, there was sort of like flooding in vicinity to the housing at Lower Mary Street. And I'm just wondering if obviously provide comment on why that's not been included within those indicative priority areas.
I'm going to ask Scott when I watch this, but I have some engagement with Scottish Water on this, and rather than board can provide an update on that. The indicative list is just that it's not exhaustive. You know, there will be other locations to go into that, and that those will be identified through the work of the flooding engineer and the surface water management plans. Gordon, can you maybe expand a wee bit?
Yep, I'll go into Quarriers, Councillor Curley. You have asked a load of questions on Quarriers, and I will answer them to you. But what I will say is the event of Gotter's water was the actual Gotter water spilling over and flooding. Now, the scheme that's in there at the moment is not designed to take that. It's only designed to take surface water in the field. Now, I can say from me being here for my amount of time that I have been, I can tell you that the flood that we had the other day was not the worst we've had. And it concerns me that if that flooding scheme wasn't in place, it would have been worse. It would have been what it was, and I think it was 2011 when it was worse, when the actual river was running down Craigbet and Tor Avenue and flooded numerous houses. And I think we would have been in that stage if the scheme hadn't been there. So we will monitor the scheme. We will monitor the scheme, and we will continue to look at it. At the moment, I don't see any improvements to it, but we will continue to monitor that and look at it. The Glenburn Street one, yep, that isn't in the list. Again, because that's probably one of the ones that we'll have a discussion with Scottish Water at it, because there is a reservoir at the top of it. So that might very well be the solution to that one. That's probably why it's not any works for us. It's works for the external party, which is why it's not on the list.
Thanks for that. Thanks for that. I think I've also provided some additional commentary of the committee with respect to the Gotland water. So if officers are able to reply to that, that's fine. We can take that offline. Just with respect to the Glenburn, that's quite interesting that you're with respect to the reservoir management at the top of the hill. Just to square the circle then with respect to that discussion with Scottish Water, how Scottish Water feeling what's Scottish Water's view about the responsibilities as opposed to the underlying population?
I think we're at the very, very early stages of that discussion, and I don't think it's fair for me to say what Scottish Water are saying. So I think we will bring a report back to committee on what happens with all the reservoirs and the position of each party.
Thank you.
Thank you, convener. First of all, I would like to thank officers for the amount of work that they put into this report. But looking through it, there are a number of areas that I think that we should also be looking at. The likes of the Cumberland Road area, where there has been quite a lot of flooding. That is on a main bus route, and it's also the access road to Larkfield Industrial Estate. There's also areas that have been highlighted by constituents where there had been quite a lot of flooding, not only recently, but in the past as well, such as Westmoreland Road, where despite work having been done there, that area is still subject to flooding. The report does mention coastal and surface water, but there is no mention of groundwater, which again is issues in certain areas. We can see that where water is flowing onto Inverkirk Road, and there's sandbags on the pavement. Also, one that is of interest to me is in the Mallard's Crescent area, where there has been flooding there. But there's also a number of pipes that seem to channel water, and again, this is long term. That seems to lead to the start of the Berry Burn. But there could well be that some of these pipes are actually leaking, and if the council could speak to myself in private later on, I can go through this in much greater detail.
I'll answer it if that's okay. The Cumberland Road and all the other sort of surface water management things will come out through the surface water management plan. I think there is areas highlighted on that, and it might again it's going to be a joint working between us and Scottish Water, because it might not all be surface water. There might be other stuff there, so that'll all come out through the surface water management plans. And we will come and talk to you about Mallard Crescent. We did go and clean all the gullies and CCTV the pipes. Now I haven't seen those surveys yet, so I can't comment on them. But I know they have been out there and they have cleaned the gullies and the tails and the pipes.
Okay, actually, thank you.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I welcome this paper and especially the recommendations 2.3 about the appointment of a flood engineer. My question, Convener, is for 3 years. Is that a budget pressure that we're going to a temporary contract for 3 years? Because obviously we won't attract the best person potentially if it's only a 3 year. In fact, they also not see potentially a maximum 3 years, but a shorter contract. Wouldn't it be great to have a permanent? Is that a budget pressure? Is the do you think that's the right thing? 3 years? Why are we going 3 years?
Yeah, so you can be as a budgetary issue. I mean, we're utilising budgets that are there at the moment for that 3 years. 3 years is the minimum we'd like to put in place for, but you know, we simply don't have budget to put it in place at the moment. It will be difficult to attract someone. I appreciate that, even on a permanent contract, but we have to attempt recruitment and see.
Keeping that, there was a stage where I had shared working, and obviously we looked at sharing a flood engineer, if my memory serves me correct. Do we have, is my memory going? I know I'm getting old. So is this a brand new position, or did we previously have intelligence for another local authority?
I mean, Gordon will probably know better than me, but we've certainly had a flooding engineer in post for a number of years, but we haven't had one for a number of years. Gordon?
Yeah, I think 2017 is the last time we had a dedicated one. So we have had a couple. I think we've had 2 in between, and maybe another one prior to 2008 or something. So there has been a couple, and you're right, they're not the easiest people to try and employ because it is quite specialist. But we'll need to try to start with. I mean, it's been tried to be covered by my team, and it's just becoming too big, and they're falling behind with the surface water management plans, which is why we need a dedicated resource to help us get through that.
I wish Gordon well.
Yeah, from memory, I think we took that as a budget saving 1 year, and basically budget savings do come back to bite me sometimes. I was going to be asking, the report identifies that additional resources will be required to progress the high priority projects. If officers get any idea where they're going to get that money from, because money at a national level from Scottish Government has been, for flooding has been cut. We've had a general capital grant cut as well. Do we know where we're going to get that money from?
You can be that. Unfortunately, no, there's no obvious areas of funding, and there's certainly no indication of where dedicated funding from Scottish Government in the short and medium term. So it will be a pressure. There may be a small balance left from what we've got in the current plan, but not enough to take all of it.
So we're going to have to look at our reserves or reprioritising projects.
Potentially, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, can we agree recommendations? Yeah. Peter? Yeah.
So you can get into it with the indulgence. If I can just clarify with right to me, I've got the mood of the group, as it were. So we're supporting the sites, just to do with the labyrinth sites. We're supporting the proposed sites, but that's subject to officers bringing a report to a future meeting of the committee on consultation with community councils and others for member consideration prior to final site approval. Is that going too far? Is that what you're looking for? I would drop others. Community councils, sure. So
I think Councillor Quinn was also suggesting local elected members as well.
It's just ward councillors and councillors and community councils.
So you can't comment on Coronation Park, Chris.
I know. I've
in your ward, Chris.
no. I've just raised it. It's just to ensure there's people are talking.
You can share a regeneration forum as well, if you want. Cover under that.
Right, okay, moving on. Item number 10 is the Public Energy and Climate Change Update Report. Eddie?
Thanks, Gavina. The report provides an update on various streams linked to energy and climate change and net zero. The 4 main areas, the first is an update on some of the energy action plan projects under the heading of energy use and buildings and natural environment. And the details of those are included in the appendix 1. And the second item deals with the ongoing work on the local heat and energy efficiency strategy, LHES, and the associated delivery plan. Drafts of both documents are attached to the report, and appreciate there's quite a lot in those. Public consultation is planned to be carried out on the LHES and delivery plan during the remainder of the first quarter of this year. The LHES and delivery plan are prepared to fulfil the potential duties under the local heat and energy efficiency strategy Scotland order, The outputs will all be going to fulfill its strategy duties under the each of the blocks of the Act. And without item, it's linked to the LV stock stream, provides an update on activity being undertaken on feasibility of the heating network, governs the green water fund there. And funding supports potentially available to sort of government to allow the existing feasibility work to be taken to the next stage with a more detailed assessment that can support the preparation of a business case. And we're seeking approval to submit a funding application so the report. The last step is to raise an update on climate change and mandatory reporting. There are some of the trends to be done for 2023 included as appendix 3 and some further details on comparison with previous years. The rate in the body of the report, including what we need to consider in future returns. That's approve the recommendations from our sense.
Thanks, Ed.
Yeah, a lot of good information in the report. I would say it's a very good update, and happy with the recommendations. The question I have is something I suppose it's no in the report, but it's related to the reduction in carbon, is in terms of the investment in our fleet and trying to reduce the carbon footprint of our fleet. And I know there's challenges around that in terms of affordability of electric vehicles and whatever. Where are we with that?
So you can I mean, the last report we brought to committee, I think it was last year, was seeking approval. We got that approval to take forward contribution from the Net Zero Action Plan to augment the vehicle replacement plan, and that's to address the light commercial vehicles by a date when Ken's online. You can remember the actual date we're implementing that, but certainly over the next 2 financial years. And aligns with that, so we're funding for charge points to support that and replacement of diesel vehicles with LED. Beyond that, if we do not have a defined plan, and some of the larger vehicles, they're still waiting on an answer in terms of how we're bringing forward ones that will actually do the job properly, and things like refuse vehicles and things like that. That's not quite the area. So I don't know if Ken's available for comment, but that's the last update on that particular action plan. But light commercial vehicles being taken forward over the next 2 financial years, and the commitments to then take a report back closer to the end of that period of how we take forward the remainder.
So what would fall into the category of light commercial vehicles?
I think it, from my own knowledge of it, hopefully Ken can confirm it's maybe up in a transit van type size, and anything about that.
Would it include the small minibuses we've got?
I don't know. I need to check that and come back to it again.
I'm happy to come in. Sorry from the side. It's essentially car-derived vans, and we're well in target to meet the first target. Where the problem is, as Eddie rightly said, is the larger fleet vehicles, buses, minibuses, which maybe don't have either the affordability attached to them at the moment, or maybe the problems around the battery life. So, and that's why there's a target for 2030 as well. So, first set of targets we're well in line to meet, but those vehicles are more car-derived or car-type vehicles.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Derek.
Yeah, just for information. So I sat through a weekend conference on this subject last week, and I'm sure members will know how delighted I was that the National Association of Councils picked this as a subject. So I'm happy to share the slides and the information with the elected members or with Mr. Wagner.
Good. Okay, can I agree recommendations? Agreed. Okay, item number 11 is the proposed traffic calming measures. Sorry, that's been sorry. 12 is the real-time passenger information at Nicholson Street bus stances.
Yeah, thanks. I thought since we were introduced real-time traffic information installation at Nicholson Street bus stances, as a building that they watch. So that's the committee. So it's information to the traffic and so.
Great. The public picture agreement, David. Yes. So, am I agreed? Yep. Agreed. Okay. Okay, 13 is Glasgow Chemical Waiting and Loading Traffic Regulation Order. Variation number 8 and 9 of 2022 and the reporter's recommendations.
Yeah, thanks, Convener. As the report stipulates, it provides the committee with an independent report of recommendations on the proposed traffic regulation orders to cover those of the Coronation Park or Glasgow, which will be available in common form. Nothing to add to that. For details in the report, that's committee note report and approve the recommendation.
Don't be so fast, Councillor Cogherty.
Steve?
I was waiting for Councillor Cullen.
No, you go ahead.
It's just because nobody else came, I just assumed that it was agreed.
No, it's not. So I think we've been through due process here. We've obviously appointed an independent reporter in light of some of the representations or who'd made the representations. And I mean, I think normally we would simply accept the recommendations of the independent reporter. And certainly in terms of Dublin Road and Coronation Park, I personally think these are challenging, but I think the arguments, the balance is in favour of the report of recommendation, the original recommendation. I'm not convinced, I have to say, in relation to the one for Kilmacombe. I think the analysis that's in there and the reporter's assessment, I think it's a pretty marginal decision, to be perfectly honest. I think in an ideal situation, would the proposal enhance road safety? I would probably say yes. Is it absolutely necessary? Is there an alternative? And I think there is an alternative that would require a traffic regulation order. And the loss of car parking space is important because Kilmacombe is a very, very busy village. The main car parks are always pretty full, and on-street parking is always very difficult to secure. And this is one location where you do often get a space, and it can be people who are obviously visiting their GP. There are two entrances to this GP practice, and they're fortunate, unlike the adjacent GP practice, to have their own car park. They've got a quite extensive car park at the rear of the property, and they have one entrance which leads directly to the car park, and another exit which is at the other end of the building onto the road. So the first entrance is the Bridge of Wearside, and the second entrance and exit is at the cross side. And I think it's perfectly feasible to have a one-way system where you can go in one side and come out the other side. I don't think there is a need to have restrictions at both sides, because I do think that leads to a loss of car parking, which I don't think can be justified. The car parking that they've got within the coverage of the doctor's practice is a significant amount of car park, significant. And more than enough to accommodate all the staff and the GPs at work in that practice. So I do think that we should, in this occasion, in this particular one, not agree to progress the Yarrow.
Casual clarity for legal, so we were sitting here to make a decision on TRO. I just wonder how much could be instruct the doctor surgery, whoever owns that land, about the way the vehicles going in and out. We're actually here to just say year nay to TRO, and I'll be in agreement that the variation of online is not appropriate. But I'm just interested in how much more we can say than saying yes or no.
Well, I think we need to be clear, the reason why the TRO was considered in the first place is that it was a request from the practice themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm agreeing with the question. Okay, so what I'm just trying to confirm is if we agree not to uphold this and obviously not to have this variation, can we in further comment to the applicant?
No, we couldn't force them to introduce a one-way system of operation. We could suggest to them that's what they do.
That's simply my answer to my question to me.
Ian, have you got anything you'd like to add?
No, no, I don't think so. I'd agree, obviously, that we can't impose anything unilaterally on the GP surgery, in my understanding of matters. And I think then officers would just take this away and
and reflect on the decision, but we wouldn't be implementing on the back of if that's what committee decides today.
Okay, thanks. Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I note with interest what Stephen said, but I think my concern is making sure that if we conscious of the fact that I don't want to prejudice any further discussions on this matter when it comes to this committee or another committee in the future. So my concern is we went so far down the process here, and I just want to get clarity from officers with respect to this. Effectively, where does that lead us if this comes back again? Because if we're saying no to this particular order, if this comes in another order in subsequent times, are we able to look at that afresh, or has, because this decision has happened today, does that, what do you call it, does that give some sort of problem for any future consideration of this matter or a very similar matter in the future?
Ian?
Yep, through you, convener. No, I don't think so, Councillor Curley. In the same way that other applications can be refused, it doesn't stop them coming forward again at a later date. Obviously, it may be that there's elements of this that need reflected on, maybe a partial TRO just for part of it might be appropriate given the feedback today. So no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I think we just need to be clear of the process here. This is the first and only time that I've had the opportunity as a member of this committee to express a view on this particular TRO. Because what happened was we went out of the process, there was objections, the report came back, and because one of the objectors was an elected member, we decided to delegate the assessment to a reporter. But we didn't delegate the decision to the reporter. The reporter's making a recommendation to us. It's our decision. If we had decided to consider this matter and the other TRO, if we had decided to consider that as part of this committee sitting as a special meeting, I would have had the opportunity to question officers on why they were proposing it, and we would have had the opportunity to hear any of the objectors and question the objectors, and then we would have, as we did today for an earlier meeting, we would have went in and had a discussion as committee, and then we'd have taken a decision whether it was a majority of committee or not. This is the only opportunity that I've got, and any of us has got, to take a view in this TRO. So I'm exercising my opportunity. I might be alone in my view on this, but I'm exercising my opportunity, which is perfectly legitimate, for me to say I don't agree with the recommendation from the reporter on the matter in relation to Bridgeway Road and Kilmacolm, and I'd like that removed from the TRO, and that's perfectly legitimate for me to propose that.
Okay, no member what?
I'm just conscious of the fact that if it does come before this committee again, very similar, don't prejudge any future discussions.
Sorry a minute. Why will the TRO come back before this matter? It would only come back before this matter if officers of the council brought forward another TRO or a variation to the TRO. That's the only reason we come. This committee makes the decision. If we decide not to progress the TRO doesn't come forward, and it would only come back if officers brought it back, thinking that there was a reason why they needed to bring it back.
Okay, and we have it to agree with Stephen's.
I'm happy to support Stephen's position.
Okay.
And I think just for clarity, we've also looked at this thing because it's a quasi-judicial matter. We haven't made a group decision on this matter as
No. Okay, you okay to amend the recommendation?
And Councillor Clockert is perfectly to move an alternative to motion to amend.
Yeah, and my alternative is that we agree, as we had done numerous times in the past, we agree with the reporter's recommendations at 3.1, 1, 2 and 3.
Okay. That changes things somewhat.
And as you can tell, we've not had a group decision. Because it's same condition.
Okay, so through you can do it. So Councillor McKee, would you contend that your motion is simply the recommendation one, in terms of the terms of the recommendations, but not placed, therefore we don't make it.
No, it's only in relation to Bridgeway and Kilmacombe. So we accept the recommendations in relation to Dover Road and Coronation Park, right? So don't accept the recommendation in relation to Bridgeway Road and Kilmacombe. And there, make the order, but the order doesn't include the proposal for Bridgeway Road and Kilmacombe.
So there's two, because there's two separate orders, so we're accepting the first variation number 8 order, but we're not agreeing to the variation number 9 order.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Councillor Property, your amendment is a recommendation to further. Okay, so members, I can ask you just to indicate whether you are for Councillor McCabe's motion or for Councillor Cofferty's amendment. Councillor Brooks. Motion. Councillor Cassidy. Motion. Councillor Cofferty.
Amendment.
Councillor Crowther.
Amendment.
Councillor Curley.
Motion.
Councillor Jackson.
Motion.
Councillor McCabe.
Motion.
Councillor McCormick.
Amendment.
Councillor Quinn.
Amendment.
And Councillor Roberts.
Motion.
6-4. So that's 6 for Councillor McCabe's motion and 4 for Councillor Roberts' amendment, so it is the motion.
Okay.
Well, defeat for you, John.
Yeah.
Okay.